Forced a sale on the home my controlling mother and I owned together after she terrorized my pregnant girlfriend and newborn. My mother has been abusive, impulsive, and controlling for as long as I can remember. Every relationship she's ever had has ended in disaster because of her behavior, whether it was colleagues, her siblings, my dad, her ex-husband, or even friends. The list goes on and on. 3 years ago, I got an amazing job opportunity in a different country where, thankfully, we have a large extended family. I seized the chance, not only to experience life on a new continent, but also to distance myself from the constant storm my mother created. So, I moved, settled into my apartment, and started building a new life. It wasn't long before my retired mother decided she wanted a change, too. She visited and immediately proclaimed she was going to buy a home near mine and move as well. But the country's immigration laws are strict. You need a long-term visa, not just a tourist one, for extended stays. My mother, with her trademark stubbornness, refused to listen. She insisted on doing things her way, bought a stunning beachfront property anyway, thinking this investment would automatically secure her citizenship. When lawyers and government case officers tried to explain the rules, she grew indignant, arguing about the amount of money she was bringing into their society, insisting they should make exceptions for her. After a few failed meetings with officials, reality dawned on her. Eventually, we reached a compromise. I would live in the property, pay the bills, keep it maintained, and she could visit whenever she wanted without worrying about it being vacant. While building my life there, I met my girlfriend. Things got serious between us. After a while, she moved in. To my surprise, my mother seemed genuinely happy for us. She FaceTimed with us often, grew quite fond of my girlfriend, and a sense of peace settled, albeit temporarily. Everything changed when we discovered my girlfriend was pregnant. We eagerly shared the news with my mother, who showered us with excitement and, shockingly, gifted me 50% of the home as a present to our new family. I couldn't believe it. It was the most generous gesture I'd ever received and completely unexpected. That summer, my mother decided to visit and announced she'd be staying for 6 months to help out before and after the baby was born. Her intentions sounded kind on paper, but this is where things started to unravel. A week or two into her visit, with my girlfriend about 6 or 7 months pregnant, all hell broke loose. I'd texted her privately, asking her not to announce our family's financial situation to everyone. She has a bad habit of boasting about her wealth and assets, which makes me uncomfortable. I just didn't want the whole world knowing our business. That small request set her off. She erupted, accusing us of making her sick with stress, threatening to kick us out, and insisting we needed to find our own place. My girlfriend, understandably terrified, witnessed my mother scream at us for 2 straight days, while she was heavily pregnant, no less. My mother's paranoia is notorious. She constantly believes her phone is hacked, regularly reports unlikely crimes to the police or FBI, and trusts almost no one. She once even accused friends of stealing from her or hacking her bank accounts. Suddenly, she booked a flight back to her home country, left a note demanding we move out and get a new car, and set a move-out date. For a week or two, she kept texting, asking for real estate and car listings, but I ignored her manipulation and focused instead on supporting my girlfriend, who was nearing delivery and didn't need another ounce of stress. 3 months after my child was born, my mother came back, planning to stay with us for 6 months again, this time supposedly to help during the holidays. After what happened during her previous visit, my girlfriend was understandably hesitant, but I found myself persuading her that the presence of her grandchild might mellow my mom's behavior. For a few weeks, things were bearable, tense, but manageable. My mother remained controlling, constantly overstepping, and worst of all, she insisted on lecturing us about parenting instead of letting us figure things out as new parents. The final straw came during the holidays. We planned a week-long visit with my girlfriend's family, about 2 hours away. My mother had met her parents before, but this trip, she transformed into a cold, distant stranger. She barely spoke to her hosts, ignored family members, and refused to join in on any of our holiday traditions, dinners, games, trivia, even gift openings. Instead, she obsessively tried to take the baby from anyone holding her. Abruptly, she left the festivities without telling anyone, returning alone to my girlfriend's parents' house. I scrambled to make excuses, telling everyone she was sick. The next morning, at 4 a.m., she woke me with a call, screaming that she hated my girlfriend, hated her family, and demanded to be picked up so she could leave immediately. I drove out to find her, standing in the dark with her luggage, frantic to catch a train home. When I explained there weren't any trains at that hour, I convinced her, reluctantly, to wait back at the house. When we walked in, my girlfriend, holding our infant daughter, greeted her with a gentle, "Hi. What's going on?" My mother exploded. She lunged, screamed profanities, and declared no one in my family would ever see the inside of her home again. I stepped between them, physically moving my mother and her bags out to the car to defuse the situation, making it clear I would never allow her to threaten my girlfriend, especially while she was holding our baby. I dropped my mother at the train station and rushed back, shaken, to be with my girlfriend. The next few days were filled with a barrage of threatening texts from my mother. It became clear she was changing the locks and that we would never be allowed back inside her home. She demanded we collect our belongings, even though 95% of what was in the house was ours. So I gathered some friends and went to pack up. When we arrived, my mother was inside, surrounded by neighbors she'd barely spoken to before. I still don't fully understand why they were there. As I left, feeling the weight of all the damage she'd done, the truth hit me hard. Crossing boundaries wasn't something she could or would stop. This was my breaking point. My relationship with her, just like so many others in her life, was now in ruins. My family and I were suddenly thrust into chaos when my own mother showed how far she's willing to go for her own interests, with zero regard for anyone else. The situation became so dire, I realized the neighbors had to know exactly what kind of person she really is. A psycho who doesn't care about anyone but herself. We were incredibly lucky to find shelter for 2 weeks, otherwise, I don't know what we would have done. Eventually, after so much stress and searching, we managed to secure the only available apartment, right in the middle of the holiday season. It wasn't ideal. The apartment is tiny and cramped, and we had to make it work only because there were no other options. All of this, just as we were supposed to be celebrating and making memories as a family. It's now been about 2.5 months since she jetted back to the States in early January, and the nightmare still hasn't ended. I found out that 2 of our neighbors have actually been going into my own house to collect the mail for me and my girlfriend. The catch? Neither of them will give me the new keys to my own damn home. All because they're afraid of my mother and what she might do. Instead of doing what's morally and legally right for us, the actual residents and owners, they're stuck catering to her whims and threats. The past 3 or 4 months have felt like hell, the staggering stress, juggling full-time work, and trying to keep my girlfriend's spirits from absolutely crumbling. And while all this chaos unfolds, I've been fighting to keep a sense of structure and routine for our child, even in a cramped apartment. The holidays came and went, but we had no space to breathe, let alone celebrate, all because my mother decided that control and manipulation were more important than her own son and his family. Enough is enough. I consulted a lawyer and we're now taking action, initiating a forced sale through the courts. She doesn't know about it yet, but it's happening. To top it off, I'm bringing in a locksmith to change the locks on the house. I want my keys, I want rightful access to what is mine again, and I am finally making it happen. I honestly don't give a shit if she shows up one day and can't get inside because the locks are changed. For once, she might finally learn what it feels like to be locked out, and maybe, just maybe, she'll realize I'm done letting her control my life. Update 1. Earlier this year, everything exploded between my mother and me. We'd been sharing a home, each owning 50%, but things went so far downhill, I knew I needed to protect myself and my family. I got a lawyer, and together we decided to push for a court-ordered sale of the house. The outcome was almost a given. The way my mother had behaved made it clear she was acting in entirely bad faith. She's not a full resident here, just a tourist, and that fact only strengthened my case. Working with my lawyer, we assembled an airtight statement and stacked up heaps of evidence about how things had unfolded. When the time came, the judge didn't hesitate. My mother showed up with absolutely no legal help and blurted out she needed to kick us out on the spot, calling us rude and saying we stressed her out with our nonsense. She even admitted, right to the judge, that she'd changed the locks and handed keys to the neighbors, all just to keep us from getting back in because she thought we might damage the home. It blew my mind. Why would I destroy the very place where I started raising my family? This was our home. The judge didn't buy any of her justifications. In fact, my mother's bad faith, and outright illegal actions, especially given our rights as tenants, all the more so with a child in the home, weighed heavily against her. The court wasn't about to let her off the hook for nearly kicking us onto the street in the dead of winter while we scrambled for a place to live. So, the forced sale was pushed through immediately by the court. My mother got slapped with a fine and an order to pay my legal fees, and she had to hand over the house keys within 24 hours. In a final gasp, she tried to demand I reimburse her travel costs, claiming she never expected to be hauled into court. The court brushed her off instantly. But, of course, the drama didn't end there. The housing market was rough and the home sale price wasn't where we'd have liked it. At that point, I couldn't have cared less. I just wanted this nightmare to end and to finally see my share. Soon enough, my lawyer confirmed that the house was officially sold and the deposit from the new owner cleared. As of October 1st, the place would belong to someone else. When my mother got that email, she spiraled, firing off 5 frantic emails to both my lawyer and me. Suddenly, the sale price was unacceptable and she demanded the whole transfer be voided ASAP. Out of nowhere, she wanted to keep the home, as if everything up to that point was just a misunderstanding. Court orders, of course, aren't a buffet. You don't just take what you want and leave the rest, and everything had already been decided months before with her on record agreeing the home was to be sold. Her emails got even more desperate. She started offering me double my share if I let her keep the house, insisting she wouldn't let it go at that price and raging about how I had sold it for less than she'd paid in the first place. She wanted contact info for the new buyer too, which of course we ignored. Not only did she rage at us directly, but she began stirring things up back home, dragging the whole family into it. But for once, this backfired. My aunts and cousins told her straight up, he did what he had to, he protected his family, and honestly, you should give him your share. He has a family to care for, and this was always his home. She went ballistic, called everyone backstabbing bastards, and hung up. Now, I'm finally about to get my payout, a number that's fair, and freedom from the chaos she spun so wildly out of control. She'll walk away with less than half what I receive, having torched way more than she ever should have. If there's a lesson here, it's that she took things much too far. And this time, she paid the price. Update 2. I thought the nightmare was finally over after getting the payout from the forced sale. My girlfriend and I were looking forward to moving into a proper place, maybe even buying our own home with the money I'd received. We'd been planning our future together, talking about marriage, maybe having another kid in a few years. Life felt like it was getting back on track. That lasted exactly 3 weeks. Last Monday, I got a call from my cousin Sarah back home. She sounded shaken, which immediately put me on edge because Sarah's usually unflappable. Turns out, my mother had been making rounds to the entire extended family, but this wasn't just her usual complaining about me being an ungrateful son. She'd been digging into my girlfriend's past. Apparently, my mother had hired some sketchy private investigator to do a background check on my girlfriend. When Sarah told me this, my blood ran cold. The pie had uncovered that my girlfriend had been married before, something she'd never mentioned to me. Not just married, but divorced less than 2 years before we met. She'd had a whole life I knew nothing about. I confronted my girlfriend that night after putting our daughter to bed. The conversation started calmly, but when I brought up the marriage, her face went white. She broke down completely, sobbing about how she'd wanted to tell me but was terrified I'd leave her. She said her ex-husband had been emotionally abusive, that the divorce was messy, and she'd moved to this country partially to escape him. But here's where it gets worse. She admitted there's more she hadn't told me. Her ex has been trying to contact her for months through social media. He'd found out about our daughter through mutual friends and apparently wants to meet her, claiming he's changed and wants to be part of her life somehow. She'd been deleting his messages and blocking his accounts, but he keeps creating new ones. I'm sitting there processing all of this when my phone buzzes. It's my mother, texting me screenshots of conversations between my girlfriend and this ex. Somehow, she'd gotten access to his social media or convinced him to send her the messages. The text showed my girlfriend hadn't been ignoring him completely. There were responses, conversations that went back months. Nothing romantic, but she'd been in contact with him and lying to me about it. My girlfriend saw me reading the messages and lost it. She started screaming about how my mother was destroying our relationship, how she was a psychotic bitch who wouldn't stop until she'd ruined everything good in our lives. She grabbed my phone and threw it against the wall, shattering the screen. That's when our neighbor started banging on the door. Mrs. Chen from next door was shouting about the noise, threatening to call the police if we didn't quiet down. I was mortified. We'd finally gotten into a decent apartment building, and now we were becoming those neighbors. The next few days were tense. My girlfriend was barely speaking to me, just taking care of our daughter and giving me one-word answers. I was torn between feeling betrayed that she'd hidden such a huge part of her life and furious at my mother for orchestrating this whole revelation just to cause chaos. Then, on Thursday, my girlfriend's ex showed up at my workplace. I work at a tech company downtown, and this guy somehow found out where and just walked into the lobby asking for me. Security called me down, and there he was, tall, well-dressed, confident in that way that immediately made me want to punch him. He introduced himself like we were old friends meeting for coffee. He told me he wasn't trying to cause problems, that he just wanted to know his rights regarding my daughter. I told him he had zero rights since he wasn't her biological father, but he smiled and said he'd been doing research. Apparently, in some jurisdictions, if he could prove my girlfriend was still legally tied to him in some way when our daughter was born, things could get complicated. That's when he dropped the bombshell. They'd never actually finalized their divorce. Some paperwork issue, something about him not responding to court documents because he'd moved states. According to him, they're still technically married. I drove home that day feeling like my world was crumbling again. When I walked through the door, my girlfriend took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. When I told her what her ex had said about the divorce, she went completely silent for a long time. Finally, she admitted she'd been afraid this might be the case but hadn't wanted to deal with it. She'd assumed the divorce had gone through automatically after 2 years, but she'd never actually checked. She'd been living in denial, hoping the problem would just disappear. So now I'm sitting here, writing this update, while my girlfriend, who might still be married to another man, sleeps in the next room with our daughter. My mother is probably celebrating somewhere, knowing she's successfully blown up my relationship again. And some guy I've never met is threatening to insert himself into our family because of legal technicalities. I've got a lawyer appointment tomorrow morning to figure out where we stand legally. Part of me wonders if I should have just stayed in my home country and never let any of this happen. But then I look at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib, and I know I have to fight for our family, whatever that ends up looking like. The worst part? I still love my girlfriend, even after all these revelations. But I don't know if I can trust her anymore, and I don't know if that's enough to build a life on. Update 3. The lawyer meeting didn't go the way I expected. At all. When I walked into his office Tuesday morning, I was prepared for complicated divorce paperwork, custody discussions, maybe some international law complications. What I wasn't prepared for was him asking me to sit down with a very serious expression and saying, "We need to talk about your girlfriend's immigration status." Turns out, the whole still married situation is way worse than just paperwork. My girlfriend's visa to live in this country was based on our relationship, a de facto partnership visa that required her to be single when she applied. If she was technically still married when she submitted those documents 2 years ago, she committed immigration fraud. The penalties range from immediate deportation to a permanent ban from the country. My head was spinning. I asked him how her ex-husband could possibly know about visa requirements in a country he's never been to. The lawyer paused, shuffled through some papers, and said something that made my blood run cold. Someone would have had to tip him off about the visa situation. Someone with knowledge of your girlfriend's immigration status. I immediately thought of my mother. She'd been involved in the whole process of getting my girlfriend's visa approved. Hell, she'd even written a character reference letter. She knew every detail of the application. When I got home that afternoon, I found my girlfriend packing. Not just clothes, everything. Our daughter's toys, the photos we'd put up, even the coffee maker I'd bought her for her birthday. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep dragging you into my mess." That's when she told me everything. And I mean everything. Her marriage wasn't just emotionally abusive, her ex had been controlling her finances, monitoring her communications, even following her to work. She'd been planning to leave him for months before she finally did, but he'd threatened to hurt her family back in her home country if she tried. The only reason she'd been able to escape was because her sister had helped her apply for a tourist visa here, and she'd never gone back. But here's the kicker, she'd been sending him money. For 2 years, she'd been transferring money to his account every month. When I asked her why, she broke down completely. He'd been blackmailing her. Not just about the divorce papers, but about something else. Right before she left him, she'd transferred a large sum of money out of their joint account, money that was supposed to pay his business debts. She'd used it to pay for her visa application and travel here. In her mind, it was her money too, from her job, but technically it was theft. He'd been holding that over her head, threatening to report her to the police in both countries if she didn't keep paying him. I was furious. Not just at him, but at her for lying to me for 2 years. Every month, I'd been wondering why our budget was always tight, why she was so stressed about money. She'd been sending almost a quarter of her salary to her abusive ex-husband. But then she told me the worst part. Last week, the payments had stopped going through. Her ex had contacted the bank, claiming the transfers were unauthorized, and they'd frozen the account pending investigation. He wasn't just trying to get money anymore, he was trying to create a paper trail that would prove she'd stolen from him. That's when my phone rang. It was my mother. "I hope you're satisfied," she said without even saying hello. "Your little girlfriend is about to lose everything, and she's going to drag you down with her." I asked her how she could possibly know what we'd just been discussing. There was a pause, then she laughed, actually laughed. "Because I've been talking to her husband, of course. Nice man. Very concerned about his wife's illegal activities." My girlfriend grabbed the phone out of my hands. "You psychotic bitch." She screamed. "You contacted him? You gave him information about my visa?" My mother's voice turned ice cold. "I gave him exactly what he deserved to know about the woman raising my granddaughter. Did you really think you could lie to everyone forever?" That's when it clicked. My mother hadn't just hired a PI to investigate my girlfriend's past. She'd actively reached out to her ex-husband and given him ammunition to destroy our life together. She'd told him about the visa fraud, probably helped him figure out how to report it, and now she was sitting back watching everything burn down. My girlfriend hung up and looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Pure defeat. "She wins," she said quietly. "Your mother wins. I can't fight both of them." But here's where things took another turn. As she was talking, her phone started buzzing with notifications. Text after text, all from numbers she didn't recognize. Her face went white as she read them. "He posted about me," she whispered. "On social media. He posted about our relationship, about you, about our daughter. With photos." I looked at her phone. Her ex had created some kind of social media campaign about being separated from his wife by an international predator who manipulated her into illegal immigration. He'd posted photos of my girlfriend, of our daughter, even of me that he'd somehow gotten from her old social media accounts. The posts were getting shared and commented on by dozens of people. But the comments weren't what we expected. People were calling him out, saying he seemed obsessive and creepy. Several women had commented about their own experiences with controlling exes. One person had even recognized him and was sharing stories about his behavior that made my skin crawl. That's when my girlfriend's phone rang. Unknown number, but she answered it anyway. It was a woman named Lisa who'd seen the social media posts. Turns out, she'd been married to him too. After my girlfriend. And there was another woman, Rebecca, who'd been engaged to him last year. We're supposed to meet with both of them this weekend. Lisa says she has documentation of his abusive behavior, including evidence that he'd used financial manipulation and immigration threats to control her too. Rebecca apparently has recordings of him admitting to falsifying documents to get revenge on an ex. My girlfriend is still planning to leave, says she won't put our daughter through a legal battle that could drag on for years. But for the first time in weeks, I saw a spark in her eyes when Lisa called. Like maybe, just maybe, she doesn't have to keep running from this guy. As for my mother, I've blocked her number. Changed our apartment's locks too, just in case she somehow got a key. I don't know if I'll ever speak to her again after this. She didn't just cross a line, she obliterated it. The lawyer wants to meet again Thursday. Says we might have more options than we initially thought, especially if we can prove her ex has a pattern of using immigration status to manipulate and control women. I don't know how this is going to end. But I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of letting other people control our lives. Whatever happens, we're going to fight. Update 4. The meeting with Lisa and Rebecca was supposed to happen this past Saturday, but Lisa called Friday night in tears saying Rebecca had backed out. Apparently, my girlfriend's ex had somehow found out about our planned meeting and contacted Rebecca directly. Lisa wouldn't tell me exactly what he'd said to her, but whatever it was had scared Rebecca enough that she deleted all her social media accounts and changed her phone number. Lisa still showed up though, and what she told us changed everything. She'd been married to him for 8 months, about 6 months after my girlfriend had left the country. But here's the twist, he'd never actually divorced my girlfriend when he married Lisa. He'd committed bigamy, which is a felony in most states. Lisa had brought a folder thick with documents, marriage certificate, bank statements, even photos from their wedding. She'd also recorded several phone conversations where he'd admitted to lying about his divorce status, saying he'd figured out how to work the system and that immigration authorities were too stupid to check international records properly. But the real bombshell came when Lisa mentioned something offhandedly. He always talked about this business partner of his, some older woman who was helping him track down his assets. Said she was really connected, knew people in government. My girlfriend and I looked at each other. I asked Lisa if she remembered the woman's name or anything specific about her. Lisa thought for a moment and said, something European sounding? He called her Maria? No, Mariana? He said she was originally from somewhere in South America but lived in the States now. My blood went cold. My mother's name is Mariana, and she emigrated from Colombia 30 years ago. When I told Lisa this, her face went white. Jesus Christ, she whispered. He said this woman had a son who'd stolen something that belonged to him. I thought he was just being dramatic, but that's when it all clicked. My mother hadn't just contacted my girlfriend's ex after hiring the PI. She'd been working with him for months, maybe longer. The PI investigation was probably just to confirm details she'd already given him. I spent the rest of the weekend trying to piece together the timeline. When had my mother first contacted him? How much had she told him? And most importantly, what was her endgame here? Monday morning, I got my answer in the worst possible way. My girlfriend's visa was revoked. An immigration officer showed up at our apartment with a deportation notice. She had 72 hours to leave the country. The officer was professional but firm. Someone had filed a detailed report alleging immigration fraud, complete with documentation showing my girlfriend's marriage status at the time of her visa application. The evidence was so thorough that there wouldn't even be a hearing. The deportation was immediate. My girlfriend barely spoke as she packed. Our daughter kept asking why Mama was putting everything in boxes, and I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell a toddler that Grandma had Mama sent away? But then something unexpected happened. As my girlfriend was packing her documents, she found something that stopped her cold. Hidden in the back of our filing cabinet was an envelope she'd apparently forgotten about. Inside was a copy of her divorce decree, stamped, official, and dated 3 months before she'd applied for her visa. The divorce had gone through. She'd been legally divorced the entire time. I called Lisa immediately. When I told her about the divorce papers, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, he has copies of everything. Bank records, emails, legal documents. If he knew about the divorce, then he lied to everyone, including your mother. That's when it hit me. My girlfriend's ex hadn't been trying to prove she'd committed immigration fraud. He'd been trying to get her deported anyway, using lies and manipulation. And my mother had been his willing accomplice. I called the immigration office, but they said the deportation order was based on a credible report and wouldn't be reversed without new evidence. The officer I spoke to mentioned that the person who filed the report had been very thorough and seemed to have insider knowledge of immigration procedures. My girlfriend was supposed to leave Wednesday morning. Tuesday night, as we were both lying awake staring at the ceiling, she said something that made my stomach drop. I've been thinking about what Lisa said. About your mother helping him track down assets. She turned to look at me. What if this isn't just about getting me deported? What if they're planning something else? I asked her what she meant. The house sale money. You got a big payout when your mother was forced to sell, right? What if she's been planning to get that money back somehow? I hadn't thought about it, but she was right. My mother had been furious about the sale price, had even offered to pay me double my share to stop the sale, and now she was working with someone who specialized in manipulating legal systems and tracking down stolen assets. Wednesday morning came too fast. I drove my girlfriend and our daughter to the airport, feeling like my world was ending all over again. At the departure gate, my girlfriend handed me an envelope. Don't open this until after I'm gone, she said. And don't try to contact me for at least a week. I need to figure some things out on my own. I watched their plane take off, then sat in my car in the airport parking lot and opened the envelope. Inside was a bank statement I'd never seen before. It was an account in my girlfriend's name, opened 2 years ago, with a balance that made my eyes widen. She'd been saving money, not just the money she'd been sending to her ex, but additional money she'd somehow been setting aside. At the bottom of the statement, she'd written a note: "I've been preparing for this day since I met your mother. I knew she'd eventually find a way to destroy us. The money in this account is for our daughter's future, and for fighting back when the time is right. There's something else I never told you about your mother. Something the Pi found that I saw in his report. Check your email tomorrow. Trust me, and wait for my call." I drove home in a daze, trying to process everything. My girlfriend was gone, possibly forever. My mother had orchestrated the whole thing, and apparently, there was still more to this story that I didn't know. When I got back to the apartment, there was a car in my parking spot. A familiar car. My mother was sitting in my living room, holding a cup of tea like she belonged there. "Hello, darling," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation."